Welcome back, everyone. It always kind of blows my mind how these X-Men stories, with all the superpowered mutants and crazy villains and stuff, can actually make you think about what it means to be human, like on a deeper level.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's totally what we're going to be diving into today with this book, X-Men and Philosophy. It's like, seriously, astonishing insight and uncanny arguments in the Mutant X-Verse. That's the subtitle.
Catchy.
Right. So, this book is basically using these philosophical ideas to really understand the whole mutant experience, right? How does being a mutant, being different, make us rethink what we consider normal, what we value? It gets kind of deep.
It really does. And one of the things that really stood out to me reading this book was this whole idea of passing. Can mutants blend in? Can they hide who they are?
Oh, yeah. Like the Morlocks, right? They're like, nope, we're sticking to the sewers. The world's too scary up there.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder, is it worth it? Trying to fit in if it means hiding a part of who you are.
Right. It's a question that goes way beyond comic books, don't you think? Think about all those real-life groups who've been told to change, to assimilate, just to be accepted.
Totally. And it's not just about, looking different either, right? The book talks about Wolverine and Mystique. They can kind of control how people see them. So it's like, when do you choose to reveal your true self?
Right. And when do you wear a mask, so to speak? It's like they're constantly deciding, do I fit in or do I stand out? Really makes you think about how complex identity can be.
For sure. And who gets to decide what normal even is, right? I mean, that's a question the X-Men are always throwing at us. And speaking of identity, can we talk about Wolverine for a second? Because this dude's whole deal with the amnesia and coming back from the dead all the time, total mind bender.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if you can't remember who he is he even the same Wolverine every time? The book actually gets into some seriously deep philosophy here, talking about this guy, John Locke, and his ideas about consciousness.
Right. So Locke basically thought that our memories are what make us us. He even uses this crazy example that's kind of like Professor X and Cassandra Nova swapping bodies.
Yeah.
If your mind, your memories went into someone else, would you still be you?
Whoa. So like Freaky Friday, but with mutants.
Exactly. So the book asks, what happens when you apply that to Wolverine? I mean, every time he loses his memories, which, let's be honest, happens a lot, is he technically a new person?
Wow. That's actually kind of sad when you think about it. He's always trying to figure out who he is.
It really is. He's searching for a past that might not even be his, if we're being real about it.
It's like this tragic irony, right?
Yeah.
Trying to reclaim his past when every time he dies, it's like hitting the reset button on his identity.
Exactly.
But, okay, we've got to talk about the ethics of power in the X-Men universe because things get seriously complicated there.
Oh, yeah.
The book uses Mr. Sinister as an example. Talk about bad choices. Because he makes a deal with Apocalypse, like the ultimate villain.
Right. It's like, what would you give up for knowledge, for power?
Exactly. It's a classic Faustian bargain, right?
Yeah.
And the book uses that to get into these real-life questions about science and ethics. Like, how far is too far when it comes to things like genetic manipulation?
And it's not like a simple answer either. I mean, Sinister does eventually help the X-Men defeat Apocalypse, but at what cost, right? Does the end justify the means?
That is the question, isn't it?
It really is. And it's one of those questions that the X-Men forces us to confront. Sometimes there are no easy answers when it comes to good and evil, right and wrong. It's messy.
Totally. And it makes you realize those lines get blurry in real life, too. But before we go totally down a rabbit hole of ethics, I got to ask you about Jean Grey. She's got to be one of the most powerful mutants out there.
Oh, absolutely.
And the book takes this really interesting look at her through, an existentialist lens. You imagine having that much power, knowing that one wrong move could, end the world.
It's like, what's the point of free will when the stakes are that high? That's what Jean's always struggling with, right?
Yeah, totally. Her story really makes those big questions about purpose and responsibility hit home, don't they? It reminds us that even with all that power, she's still human, She still makes mistakes.
Yeah, and she still doubts herself.
That's what makes her story so relatable. It's like, no matter how powerful you are, you're still bound by the human condition.
It's the human element that makes the X-Men so compelling, don't you think?
Absolutely. But we've only just scratched the surface of all this stuff this book dives into.
Sure.
It's wild how the X-Men can take these real-world issues and, make you think about them in a whole new way.
Totally.
Remember that whole mutant cure thing where they could, take away someone's powers?
Oh, yeah, that was a big deal.
The book uses that to get into some deep stuff about disability and how we see normal and different.
Right. Like, who gets to decide what's considered normal?
Exactly. And how often are we just afraid of what we don't understand?
Totally. It's like those fears can lead to prejudice,
Right.
in the X-Men world and in our world, too.
Absolutely. And it makes you realize that diversity isn't something to be afraid of. Like, differences should be celebrated, not erased.
100%.
And the book connects this to the social model of disability, which I thought was super interesting.
Oh, yeah. Tell me more about that.
So it's this idea that disability isn't just about a person's body or mind, but also about the barriers that society puts in their way.
Right. It's not just about the person. It's about how the world treats them.
Exactly. Like if a building doesn't have a ramp, it's not that the person in the wheelchair is disabled, it's that the building is inaccessible.
I see. I see.
And what the book is saying is that we can kind of see mutant powers through a similar lens.
Oh, interesting. So it's like, even though their powers might seem cool, they come with challenges, too.
Totally. Like Cyclops can't even open his eyes without shooting lasers everywhere.
Right. That must get old.
And Rogue. Forget about a hug. She absorbs powers through touch.
Wow. That's a really different way to think about it.
Yeah, so the book argues that maybe instead of calling them superpowers, we can see them as just different ways of experiencing the world. Some of which, yeah, come with their own unique obstacles.
Right, and maybe instead of trying to fix those differences, we should focus on creating a world where everyone can thrive regardless of their abilities.
100%. Okay, but speaking of navigating a world that's afraid of what's different, can we talk about Magneto for a sec?
Oh, man, Magneto. Where do we even begin?
Right, he's like the ultimate example of a complex character. Is he a villain? An anti-hero?
He really makes you think about the whole hero-villain thing, doesn't he? Like, where's the line?
The book actually makes a really strong case for understanding his motivations, even if we don't agree with his methods.
And his backstory is intense. A Holocaust survivor. I mean, talk about shaping your worldview?
Right, like imagine going through that kind of trauma, seeing that level of hatred and violence firsthand.
It makes sense that he'd be distrustful of humans.
Totally. He sees prejudice everywhere, and he truly believes mutants need to protect themselves, whatever it takes.
So even though he might do bad things, he's doing them because he thinks he's protecting his people.
Exactly. It's not about condoning his actions, but understanding where they come from,
Yeah.
And I think it raises some seriously important questions about justice and what we're willing to do to achieve it.
Yeah, like when is it okay to fight back, even if it means crossing a line?
Right. And are there ever any easy answers when it comes to fighting for what you believe in?
Yeah.
Thinking about Magneto and like all the tough choices he makes, it always kind of gets me wondering, what would I do if I had powers? Would I be a hero, a villain? What kind of mutant would I be?
Right, like it's the ultimate what-if scenario, isn't it?
Totally.
Yeah.
So, if you could choose any Y mutant power, what would you go for?
Ooh, that's a tough one. There are so many cool ones to choose from.
I know, right? It's like a superpower buffet. Me, I think I'd want telekinesis, like Professor X. Moving things with my mind. That'd be amazing.
That's a good one. Although, knowing my luck, I'd probably end up accidentally levitating the TV remote to the ceiling or something.
Huh. Classic.
But seriously, I think I'd be most drawn to a power like Layla Miller's. The whole being able to see the past and the future thing.
Oh, wow. Layla Miller is a trip. Talk about a mind-bending power.
Right. Imagine the insights you could gain to see how everything connects, the cause and effect across time.
It'd be like having access to the universe's instruction manual or something. But then, wouldn't it freak you out knowing what's going to happen?
Maybe a little, but think about the good you could do, preventing disasters, helping people make better choices.
True, but that brings up the whole free will thing, doesn't it? Like, if you already know what's going to happen, do you really have a choice?
Oh, man, that's a big one.
And the book actually dives into that, too. How Lila's powers make us rethink the whole idea of choice and consequence.
Right. It's like, is everything predetermined, or do we actually have control over our destinies?
Exactly. And I think, in a way, it kind of reflects what we love about the X-Men in general. They may be dealing with these crazy powers and all, but ultimately, their stories are about human struggles.
Absolutely. It's about identity, prejudice, fighting for what's right. All those things we deal with every day, just, with a little more superpowered flair.
Exactly. And that's what this deep dive has been all about, really. taking a closer look at the X-Men universe, using it to, like, explore these big philosophical ideas, these deeper parts of ourselves.
And having some fun with it along the way.
Totally. So for anyone listening who's, like, totally hooked on these mind-bending X-Men conundrums now, seriously, check out X-Men and philosophy. It's a wild ride.
You won't regret it.
And hey, next time you're, like, pondering the meaning of life or whatever, just remember, the X-Men have probably been there, done that, and probably sparked a philosophical debate about it too.
That's the magic of the X-Men, my friend.
Truth. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the X-Men universe.